The focus of the book really is on the impact of campaign ads on what we call spillover effects of the campaign ad environment, namely information that voters have about the candidates, their interest in the process, their evaluation of elections, and their participation in the process. So it's not a book about who votes for which candidates and whether or not ads convince people to vote for certain people, which is the primary, I guess, the primary effect that candidates and parties are interested in. But the conventional wisdom and all of the sort of media discussion about ads is usually on these spillover effects, that people are turned off by politics, that they don't like campaign ads, that they get very upset when they see negative attacks and so forth. And we wanted to assess whether that actually happened, whether or not people who see a lot of campaign ads are far less interested in the process and even bitter about the process, or whether or not they even are confused about the issues in the campaign and whether they even stay home on election day. And so that's sort of the conventional wisdom. And what we're finding is that the effect is actually not true to the conventional wisdom. It's actually almost the opposite, which is that campaign ads can have a mobilizing effect and even an education effect on voters that can make them more knowledgeable about the process, more interested in the election, and even more likely to vote in certain circumstances. Our data source is the Wisconsin Advertising Project, which is a data archive that essentially has or tracks all of the political advertisements in the top 100 media markets. So anytime a political ad airs in one of these top 100 markets, which covers something like 89% of the population in the United States, these digital recorders capture the ad and send the data to the Wisconsin Advertising Project. And so the data structure is every single ad that aired in the market, the day that it aired, the time that it aired, the show it aired during, and so forth. And in 2000, I think there were 1 million political ad broadcasts in those top markets. And in 2004, there was over 1.2 million. And so there's a ton of data out there, and we can aggregate it in any way we want. If we want to know how many John Kerry ads or Howard Dean ads aired in Des Moines leading up to the Iowa caucus, we can know it very, very well. And so the information environment of campaign ads is structured perfectly. We can then take that data and attach it to surveys of national voters, and we know instantly how many ads a voter in all of these 1,000 voters or 1,200 voters, however many voters there are, might have seen. And our approach is to basically take that amount of data, that amount of ads that they might have seen, and weight it by how much TV they claim to have watched. So the more TV you watch, the more ads that were aired, the more you were exposed. People who see a lot of ads tend to think that the electoral process is working more effectively than people who don't see a lot of ads. That might seem strange because political ads are always something that candidates and that even voters always seem to be complaining about. But this is what we found, when people see a lot of ads, they're more likely to say things like, money doesn't decide politics, the election process is fair, and I trust government. And those are really unique findings because the conventional wisdom is that it has the complete opposite effect. And it could be just that people, when they see these ads, realize that the decision is up to them, and that the appeal is being made to them from candidates, and that as a result, because they now know that the decision is really up to them, they're more likely to understand the process as being better than if they didn't hear anything. Well, I mean, attack campaigning or negative campaigning has been around for as long as there's been American politics, and there are dozens of instances of presidential candidates in the 1800s attacking each other for all sorts of crazy things. The most recent I heard was Andrew Jackson said, this wasn't during a campaign, but Andrew Jackson said at the very end of his presidential term, the one thing he did regret not being able to do as president was shooting Henry Clay, that he would prefer to shoot Henry Clay. And that sort of a statement in contemporary American politics would be very out of place. And so negative campaigning and negative attacks against opponents have been around for a long, long time, and it sort of made natural sense that they would get expressed in the form of TV ads once television advertising became a dominant form of campaigning. And if you go back and look at sort of TV advertising back in the 50s and in the 60s, as small as it was at the time, there were still lots of negative attacks and critiques that were made even back then. And so it's not necessarily a new thing at all, in fact. And one of the most interesting aspects of negative campaigning is when you look at the media coverage of campaigns in the modern period, almost every single election, someone writes a news article saying that this is the most negative campaign ever, topping the previous campaign. And so every single election, someone is complaining about that level of negativity. But it really is a consistent component of American politics, and it almost should be, because if people want an issue debate, you have to talk about the opponent. You have to talk about what the other side wants to do or what their plans are, and that makes it almost a natural consequence of sort of competitive politics. So there are two extremes, really, to how political ads work. One being that ads confuse people or trick people, that they make them sort of latch on to certain aspects of an ad and mobilize them in that respect. The other is, so it's a bad effect. The other extreme is that ads, and we put this in the book, are sort of the modern form of the Greek assembly, which is that sort of people listen to the debates, make their mind up, and then they go vote with this informed decision, that they heard in this sort of electronic Greek assembly. I think our answer to that would be that it's in the middle, which is that it's not an ideal form of campaigning at all, but it's not a completely baseless and sort of negative form of campaigning either. It's not a net negative for America. We split ads up into three types: the positive ad, which only mentions yourself, the candidate; the negative ad, which only attacks the other side; and the contrast ad, which does both. We count contrast ads as negative because they most oftentimes contain a very negative appeal. But candidates would call them sort of the best type of ad because it's an issue debate between opposing sides. But they're pretty vicious too, these contrast ads. If you combine negative and contrast ads in, it's sometimes over 2/3 to 3/4 of the ads in a campaign will be considered negative. That will depend on the level of competitiveness. If a race is not that competitive, we tend to get more positive ads because there's nothing to really talk about. The more competitive a race gets, the more negative it gets. So in this Iowa caucus, for example, New Hampshire primary, there's competitiveness on both sides. There's plenty of negativity. Negative ads could have impacts in a number of different ways. It could contain information that people can use to make informed choices. Or it could stimulate them to seek out information that would have them make informed choices. And so the reason why negative ads are more effective than positive ads is really because of both reasons. One is it will contain information that people can sort of say, oh, this, John Kerry has a certain plan for health care, and it's different than George Bush's. But the second is that people will get more interested in politics after having seen these sort of negative messages, and then that will stimulate them to go out and look for additional information. And we're capturing both of those things when we assess it in this way, because it's hard to separate that out. But so negative ads are things people remember, and they're more likely to sort of think about them, reflect on them, and then go out and look for additional information. This book is significant for two real reasons. One is because it does challenge the conventional wisdom of the impact of campaign ads. There is a lot written about campaign ads, but so much of it is premised on this notion that it does bad things for American democracy. And this book is really one of the first to assess the opposite and to find significant and to find consistent results in a lot of different areas that the book is having, or that the campaign ads do have a positive impact on voters. The second is a heuristical device, or the second reason how I would frame this is a heuristical device that we came up with and we talk about early in the book that I think captures really the essence of what it is we think campaign ads do for American democracy, which is that we refer to campaign ads as sort of the multivitamins of American politics, which I think is the perfect way of assessing this, in that people take multivitamins on a daily basis to sort of supplement the fact that they don't get all the minerals and nutrients that they really should be getting from fruits and vegetables. Multivitamins on their own wouldn't keep you healthy. You couldn't live on a diet of multivitamins. You'd have to sort of still eat other stuff. But they do provide positive impacts for you, and they're certainly not going to hurt you. And so in that sense, that's kind of like what campaign ads are. You couldn't live, we wouldn't want to live in a democracy where we only sort of had a diet of campaign advertising. But like multivitamins, they do provide us valuable pieces of information in the absence of real politics, real campaigning, sort of the retail politics that we might like. And they don't hurt us at the end of the day. And I think that sort of frames and structures how campaign ads are sort of influencing the political process today.